Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's live. Happy Sunday. It's a nice day out today. I just had my little walk. Now time for a live. So what's the subject for the live today? Well, as you might know, Trump issued a couple things that I need to discuss to put people's minds at ease, give them some options, let them know what to do. And so there's going to be two subjects for today's live. First is going to be the ending, essentially, of all the TPS, okay? And there's a lot of countries that have TPS, and they're coming to an end. So what to do, okay? And secondly, there was a very chilling type memo that was sent, which the desired effect from the Trump's point of view is to make it so attorneys are afraid to zealously represent their clients because of sanctions, intimidation, and other things, sort of the same old, okay? So that's essentially the two things. Then what I'll do is I'll go back, I will see what questions you guys have, and then I will answer the questions, go one by one, and as long as everything's hunky-dory, I'll go back. I mean, the nice thing about doing a live on Sunday is I don't have to give consults afterwards. I don't have to go to court. We're all good to go. Okay, so you have questions, go ahead and ask. All right, so let's get into it. So first of all, just briefly, what's TPS? Sometimes I say initials, and believe me, immigration has a ton of them, and I forget that not everybody knows it. So TPS is temporary protected status. What does that mean? It means there's problems in another country, whatever it is. Political, economic, natural disaster, whatever it is. And the U.S. issues a decision/order saying, okay, if you from that country happen to be here in the U.S., and there's different requirements for each one, but generally legally or illegally, whatever it is, and you meet the requirements, we will allow you to stay here for a certain period of time while your country resolves the issues, and while, if there was a natural disaster, while the country gets going to help, get people back on their feet. And that's temporary protected status. And it could be, 6 months, a year, 18 months, and then renewed and whatever. And the reason that the U.S. gives temporary protected status is because, under normal circumstances, the U.S. cares about people that are from other countries that will have a very difficult time going back. Now, note, this is not the same as asylum. It's not the same as, they can't get a job in their home country, so they're here. No, it has to do with world conditions making it such that the U.S. is essentially offering a helping hand. Just for example, there was Hurricane Mitch, and that, of course, caused lots of devastation, and they're rebuilding. And so their TPS was issued in order to allow them to go the proper amount of time for rebuilding, okay? So the current administration looks at TPS a little bit differently, okay? The current administration essentially looks at TPS as somebody from another country trying to take advantage to stay here, okay? And because TPS is not authorized by Congress, of course, the president has the authority through executive order to end the TPS, okay? Now, of course, it has to go through proper procedures, which, there's going to be all kinds of lawsuits about the current, way that the TPS was ended. But essentially what happened is the administration essentially said, and it's funny how in all these different countries, all of the conditions happen to be hunky-dory now. Okay, there's no problems anymore. And it all happened to occur at the same time all over the world in all these different countries through all of the TPSs that were issued in all the different countries. So people from multiple countries are going or have received notice that they no longer are going to have TPS renewed, that it will terminate on a certain date, and that they have to leave. And the whole reasoning behind it is everything, and I'm paraphrasing, everything's hunky-dory in your home country. So the whole reason for the TPS no longer exists. Now, minus the fact that lawsuits have already been filed, okay, because there's absolutely no proof of that, just a statement from the administration without evidence, without backing, the same old, same old. So, it's going to go to court. The court will see if it was properly terminated. And assuming the court decides it was not properly terminated, will issue a remand in order to explain to the administration that to terminate TPS, there has to be a reasoned explanation as to why it no longer is needed, and there need to be sufficient notice, all the same type of stuff. So, given that, you can't rely on the fact that because, an order came down that's going to end the TPS, that, some judge somewhere is going to reinstate it or extend it or whatever. I mean, that might be the result of what's going to happen. But when it comes right down to it, that is not the reason you should just sit back and relax and say, okay, I don't have to do anything. Okay? If you came here, for example, on TPS and, it says you have until June, and the order from the administration says all TPS is going to end in April, of course there's legal arguments that you should have until June, and that it can't retroactively be slashed and cut like that. But there's different things that you need to look at in order to protect yourself. Okay, you can't just sit back and, think that because all these other lawsuits are being filed, you'll be protected. I mean, you might be, okay, which is great, which is the hope, okay? But you need to also take the initiative to do what you have to do to move forward. So what do? So normally I give a consultation to the individual clients to see what they might qualify for, okay? So, there's different kinds of visas, all different kinds. So there's family-based, there's employment-based, there's victim-based, there's non-immigrant-based, there's other kinds of immigrant-based, all different kinds. And if you qualify, then it's a matter of getting the wheels rolling and starting to go forward, okay? There's also asylum itself. So if you came here, for example, on a visitor visa, or you came here illegally and you ended up with TPS, and now the TPS is ending, and you qualify for asylum, you might now be in a good position to properly prepare it and get it submitted. Now, side note, if you're going to do asylum, you don't go to some notary that says, sign here, sign here, sign here, sign here, and it's all a bunch of baloney that's in there and all just magic words so that you end up getting a work permit, they get their money, and then they disappear. And you didn't really submit a real asylum application. And you're going to end up wishing you didn't do that. So if you're going to submit the asylum application, do it with an attorney who knows what they're doing. Okay? Each asylum application is very individualized. Okay? There's also the humanitarian parole itself. And humanitarian parole is wide open. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to get a humanitarian parole, but there might be situations where you're here on TPS. The TPS is obviously coming to an end through, executive orders because they don't want anyone here who's on TPS. And you might be able to file a humanitarian parole to stay here because of the conditions. So even though, the administration says everything is just peachy in your home country, if I were preparing a humanitarian parole, I would show that that's not the case. The State Department reports, articles, documentation, expert testimony, there's all kinds of ways of showing that it is not what the administration claims it to be. Okay? So that's that. So, if you do the humanitarian parole and that's granted, then you can legally stay here. But ultimately, you're probably going to want residency. So you have to see if you do qualify for the family-based or employment-based and then get started on those types of petitions. Okay? So that's that. Next, administration put out basically a letter, memo, whatever you want to call it, essentially stating, and I'm paraphrasing, that the attorneys who represent immigrants will be sanctioned if they do all kinds of stuff. If they file frivolous motions to this, if they file, they made it so that it's completely ambiguous as to what they mean by frivolous or unwarranted. Obviously somebody in the administration can look at anything and say it's frivolous or say it's unwarranted, and then they can claim that that's, falls under the basis and the attorney should be sanctioned. But the attorney has a right to zealously represent their client. And a letter from the administration, which is intended to intimidate the attorneys to not properly and zealously represent their clients, should not be tolerated. So the attorneys should go forward and continue to represent their clients. And if there's a decent basis for a continuance or a motion to reopen or asylum, they should be done. Okay? What is frivolous? Well, frivolous, let's just talk asylum. Frivolous for asylum is when the application's made up, there's nothing real in there, and there's no basis to file it, and the only reason they're filing it is to stay here and get the work permit. That's frivolous. Okay? Any attorney who takes that should be sanctioned. Okay? But that's not what the memo is doing. The memo is making the attorney afraid to file the asylum application for fear of getting sanctioned for filing a lawful asylum application or continuation or motion to reopen or any of the other avenues of relief that are available legally to people who are applying for those forms of relief. It's intimidation, pure and simple. It's an attempt to stop First Amendment rights between attorneys, their clients, and so forth. Okay? So I know and I knew that we attorneys, immigration attorneys, would have to fight this matter for 4 years. I knew it. And it's not just a matter of the administration pushing the envelope. It's like jumping over the envelope like there is no envelope. So it's just a matter of fighting and going forward. There are a ton of good judges out there who follow the law, who look at the facts, who look at the law and make the decisions based upon that. They don't just sit there and go, well, I'm conservative, I'm liberal, and therefore, I'm going to vote one way or the other just because of that. No, they look at the law. Okay? So there's a big burden that such a memo has to be legitimate. Okay? So don't let the memo, and I'm talking now to the attorneys out there, don't let the memo intimidate you from doing what you know is right to properly represent your client. You understand, you can file an asylum application, for example, and you can lose. Everybody knows that. But that doesn't mean it was frivolous. Okay? Everybody knows there's a chance of winning or chance of losing. That's why there's a judge. Okay? And that's why there's appeals processes. Okay? So, given that, That's my spiel for today. All right. So let's see what we have here. So how's everybody doing today on this Sunday? Is everybody up or are they still sleeping? It is 10 o'clock on the Western Coast. I haven't slept personally until 10 o'clock. I don't think I ever slept until 10 o'clock. I'm just telling you, I'm a morning person. I can get stuff done in the morning way better than at night. Nighttime, I'm like in slow motion going through sludge. Okay? In the morning, I'm like Speedy Gonzales. All right, let's see. Let's see what we have here. I'm going to see if we have any questions. I don't usually do a lot of lives on Sundays, so I don't know if people have questions on Sundays or if they're just drinking their coffee, enjoying the show. Let's see. What about people? Okay, here's a question. What about people who did fake marriages? You said for the pain card, but I assume you mean green card. Because when you get the green card, that's happy, not pain. Well, there's a lot of laws against that. Okay? There's a lot of laws against marriage fraud. And it doesn't just affect the immigrant who committed the marriage fraud, because fraud on this part takes both parts. Takes both parties. It takes the U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident, and it takes the foreign national. And there are laws in effect that will prosecute and can prosecute U.S. citizens for marriage fraud, and obviously can put people in deportation proceedings who are foreign nationals, and if they're convicted or if it's determined that they committed marriage fraud, then they wouldn't be eligible for benefits for the rest of their life, even if later they have a legitimate marriage, 13 kids, and all this other stuff. Okay? I do know a lot of times that people who get in marriages and that, shortly after the other one gets the green card, they leave, they'll just jump up and say marriage fraud. That by itself is not sufficient. There needs to be evidence of the fraud. I mean, I'll exaggerate. $10,000 check, no living together, no proof of a real marriage. That's obviously marriage fraud, but it's usually not that easy to prove. Okay, but additionally, there's the I-751 petition to remove the conditional residency, which afterwards they can, try to again show that it's a bona fide marriage. I noticed I got 3 roses, and I didn't say thank because I didn't know who gave it. But I'm thanking whoever gave me the 3 roses. If anybody else wants to give a rose, have at it. I like getting roses. I appreciate it. Okay. Duma got the number 1 gifter badge. Okay. Oh, thanks. Tomas sent a rose. Appreciate it. Let's see. Pen. Okay, so I put the pen up there. Why does it always automatically default to I'll sing a song? Okay. I applied for a U visa in 2018. I just got notice that I'm fit and they will send, but there's only 10,000. Well, there are only 10,000 per year. I mean, there's not just 10,000 U visas and then it ends forever. There's 10,000 per year. And as it increases and more people apply, the backlog takes longer and longer, as I'm sure you're seeing. Okay? So if it showed that you had a bona fide case, you just have to keep at it. Okay? You might also qualify for something else. So don't think just because you qualified for the U and applied for that you can't do anything else, because you might still be waiting another 5-10 years. Okay? And if you wait another 5-10 years, then you're going to wish that you had applied for something else that might be faster. Okay? If you applied for the U, I've noticed on a lot of the cases I take, there are certain ones that apply for the U that also qualify, for example, for a T. Victims of sex trafficking, victims of work trafficking, that do also in many cases fall under the U. But if you get the T, there's no backlog. And it's a lot faster. You don't need the certification from the police. Okay? So if you qualify, that's what you should do. It's like 2 horses going around the track. Because people say, well, I already applied for the U. Can I also apply for the T? Answer is yes. Okay, first one to the end wins. All right, let's see what we got here. Murad got the #1 gifter badge. Appreciate it. Sir, you don't read comments? I do. I am reading the comments. I answered your question, Sonny. And I'm not saying Sonny like I'm, your name is Sonny. But first I give my spiel, okay? I give what the purpose of why I do the live, and then I answer questions. All right? What's your experience approval rate with 237? Okay, 237. I always find it interesting that people ask that because, first of all, experience, I have 30 years. Okay, 3 decades or more, a little more now. But you can't, no attorney takes all the hundreds and thousands of, you know how many cases I've had over the years? You know how many cases I've opened? About 5,500, okay? And I don't keep track of, what percentage of everything that I file. There's a ton of different kinds of filing. The point is, everything's different. You're going to have a different adjudicator. You're going to have a different person opposing it. The facts are different. The point is, does the attorney know how to file it and how to argue it? Not that they can give you some paper that says, I have an 83% approval rate, because that's a load of baloney. Okay? It's, do they have experience doing it? And the answer is, well, if you're asking me, yes. I know how to make good arguments. My office does that all the time. That's what you need. Okay? Don't just rest who you're going with by thinking some attorney's going to give you some paper saying what their percentage is. That's just a load. Okay. Can I get U.S. citizenship with aggravated felony? Unlikely. Okay? You got a 212H waiver, but that depends. Okay, it turns out that I think I'm going to have to end the live. I know that there's a lot of questions I didn't get to, but I'll get to it next time, and then we'll go from there. All right? Everybody have a good day.